Basically, I've got, through that whole patient story, there was 2 different times that I was on pharmaceuticals. So I've got 5 years experimenting with what I now call synthetic medicine, which is chemical-based medicine. Really, as a kid and all through my life, I've got more years of experience than that. But I wasn't on a lot of medicine until this accident. They put me on pain pills, and when I realized they weren't working and I realized how addictive they are, I, again, went to California and got my medical card, and I came back to the surgeon in Oklahoma, and I said, no thanks, doc, I'm not going to do that surgery. I decided against it, and also, here's your pills back. I found something better. That same thing replayed a few years later because they ended up putting me on depression, anti-anxiety type medicine. And so 2 different times in my life, I've used cannabis to detox off of synthetic meds. Ultimately, what I decided is I need to go green and get clean, which is part of my brand. But what that means to me is, no, I'm not a vegetarian. I get asked that a lot. You can see in the picture right here, I've got a bunch of meat sitting there I'm cooking. I just believe that our meat should be clean. I believe that what we feed our meat should be clean because it ultimately comes back into our bodies. Ultimately, what I struggled with was sporadic cannabis benefits. What that means is I constantly was trying to figure out why sometimes the plant worked for me and sometimes the plant didn't work very well. Sometimes the plant didn't work at all. I could never figure out why sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And so I started using psychological research to really dig into this plant and figure out how to make it work better and how to get consistent results. That led me to cooking with cannabinoids. I realized that I had to start cooking this and doing this in my very own kitchen. But that's a little bit about Tony the patient. Would you guys like to meet another Tony? Tony the patient would like to introduce Tony. Tony is a child. I put that in there because you can see I'm green. I'm out playing outside, which I love to do my entire life, especially as a kid, climbing a tree. I'm actually green there, but I'm not clean. The reason I say that is you can see I'm holding a soda can, and these are the type of things that as I went through my healing process, I realized sugars like this. Ironically, I'm holding a tab can there, and the chemicals that are in so much of our food supply makes the plant often not work because it's not able to do its job. So I'll tell you guys more about that, more about the journey. But there's a few different sides of Tony, you guys. It's not just Chef Tony. So it's time to get serious. Let's talk about this. I got a disclaimer for you, first of all. Hopefully you guys have seen this disclaimer before because it's the FDA disclaimer. What I find, I think this is brutally important for the industry. I think for you, those of you that are leaders and working in the industry, a lot of us don't really know or understand this statement. When we make statements like this will help people or this will help you with depression, oh, you struggle with anxiety, the plant helps anxiety, you need this for anxiety. We're actually getting ourselves in trouble and not following this. The 2 most important lines are underlined here. The first one says, these products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. If you guys are out stating anything different than that, you're going against the FDA disclaimer that is important in how we market these products to the patients. Next line says, please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications. Reason I say that and what I've learned is I can tell my story. I can tell how cannabis helped me. But when I tell people that they should do this, that, or the other because that's what I do, that's where we can cross the line and get ourselves in trouble. So we should always end with, you should talk to your healthcare professional. Any advice we give them about how cannabis helps us, we need to put that disclaimer in there as professionals. And I think it's important. I think it's especially important in the culinary world. So I came up with Chef Tony's disclaimer. We'll have a little bit more fun. We'll go back to, because FDA is not fun. Chef Tony likes to be more fun. But I will share my patient story, and I believe I could help anyone with various issues find an herbal remedy for health and healing. That's what this is all about. Warning though, I'll warn you guys, it started in my kitchen, and your healing journey will probably lead you to spend more time in your kitchen as well. This is my healthcare disclaimer. When it comes to talking healthcare professionals, this protocol caused me to ask different questions to my healthcare provider and may result in a similar side effect for you. It's ironic now when I go to doctors, I ask them different questions. So the question I like to ask and see how they respond is, hey, what are your thoughts on plant-based medicine? You should see the reactions that I get from doctors when I ask them that question. A lot of them just admit they don't know anything about it. I've actually gotten a chance to educate doctors, and they don't know the history that plant-based medicine has not only been around for thousands of years, but it just died in the early 1900s. And as the medical schools transitioned over to synthetic medicine, it's amazing what's happened in the last 80 years that we've completely removed ourselves from plant-based medicine, and we only go about it the way that we do today. Another important disclaimer, do you guys know who this is? He's actually kind of been forgotten in this movement that I've talked about the last year, but yes, sir, you got it right. This is Hippocrates' disclaimer on this subject, and ironically, he's considered the father of medicine. He lived 2,500 years ago, but his information is still relevant, even though it seems to be forgotten. He has the Hippocratic Oath, which actually the doctors state as they go through the process to become a doctor. But what Hippocrates says on this subject is the greatest medicine is teaching people how not to need it. This plant provides that to me, and I think, the irony is, what would a lot of doctors say if you say, hey, you took the Hippocratic Oath, but can you tell me how to not need medicine? They've been trained to do differently. So my mission is to serve people with forward-thinking solutions to go green and get clean. The truth is that when people go green and they get more plants in their bodies, they will get clean, but only if the plants are clean themselves. So I like to define clean as chemical-free. That's actually a foreign concept these days, but it should be pretty simple to understand. The reality is so much of our food today is far from clean, and if we want to optimize our bodies, then it's time to eat cleaner or chemical-free. Our bodies are designed in such a way that we should all be considering our own cannabinoid nutritional levels. One of the things that I struggled with as I went through a healing protocol trying to determine whether the plant worked or not is I really had to start listening to my body. And I find that if we listen to our body as we go through healing, it'll actually speak to us. Toxins are a huge part of the healing process, and often we get a buildup of toxins. And we're exposed to toxins everywhere these days. They're in the air, they're in the chemicals, they're in the pollution, but unfortunately it doesn't stop there. I think they're actually in the medicine, or I should, again, FDA, I had medicine that had toxins in it and affected me in a toxic way. But the worst part is, guys, it's also in our food. We're starting to see some of the same Roundup material that kills kills weeds, that is coming through in the food source. We're seeing things like that to where we can no longer count on our food being clean. That causes toxins to build up in the body, and these are some of the symptoms of what happens when toxins build up in the body. For me, the first one was exhaustion. It was really fatigue. Like, I couldn't even take my dog on a 15-minute walk. It was hard to get myself to do it. And once I did it, I felt worse. I felt even more exhausted. I think a big part of that comes with exhaustion and fatigue is brain fog. I believe I got misdiagnosed with depression. It was just extreme fatigue and brain fog. But it had the same symptoms as depression, but I'd go in and out of it so quick. They said, well, maybe you're bipolar because you go in and out of it no quick. No, it was what I was putting in my body. It caused irritability. They wanted to diagnose me with anxiety and put me on a bunch of anxiety meds. And every med I took, it worked for a little bit. For a few months, I felt a little bit better, but then the symptoms would always return, and I'd feel worse, on the meds 6 months later than I felt prior to ever getting on the meds. And that's how I figured out that what was going on is that really it was a buildup of toxins in my gut and body had been, certain bacteria and healthy things in my body had been destroyed by the medicines I was taking. Constipation is the last one on the list. I bring that up because so much happens in our gut that if we're paying attention to our gut and our bowel movements, we can find out how toxic we are. I won't spend a lot of time talking about bowel movements today because that's actually a 3-hour class, but I didn't figure you guys wanted the poop talk today, right? We're talking about cooking with cannabinoids. We probably don't want the poop talk. All right, good. The reality is, though, that if we look at those toxins and what actually comes out, these are some of the things I struggled with. The first 3 up there is bloated stomach, heartburn, and abdominal pain. I think a lot of times we don't take what's going on in our gut serious. It's just heartburn, I'll take some antacid. Those type of things only work, and again, they're a temporary Band-Aid to fix the solution. Number 4 there, burping. I bring that up because now I'm to the point that I'm on the other side of this, that I've healed up, that I no longer consider heartburn or burping normal. I know that the precursor to me getting sick is I eat something, my tongue starts tingling, has a reaction, I burp it up. Anything I burp up, I no longer consider normal. I realize that's a toxin or something my body didn't like, and that food is not acceptable to my gut, and it's trying to push it back out. I bring all that up because it's very important, and if you can see the next one says constipation and diarrhea. If we pay attention to what's going on in our gut and what's coming out or not coming out of our bodies, we can see how toxic we are, and I can promise you the importance of the gut is vital, and we're just beginning to re-understand that. But Hippocrates also said that all disease begins in the gut. And a lot of people like to argue with this, but the reality is, for me, now that I'm on the other side of this, what I realized is my gut got upset. It caused inflammation in my gut. Inflammation spread from my gut to my body. I felt it in my joints pretty quickly after. Inflammation spread to my back. Within 2 days, the inflammation spreads to my brain, and I begin to feel the brain fog or the depression, anxiety symptoms. So it's a 3-day process. What we eat, we're going to feel it for the next 3 days. Same thing applies. If we start eating cleaner, I believe that we can feel it within 3 days, and we can start making a difference there. But I think it's important to realize that all disease does begin in the gut. And when we look at the actual symptoms, this is called leaky gut from Dr. Axe. He's one of the ones that I followed a lot in this healing journey. And the very first one there, sinuses and mouth. I went to an allergist and I said, I've never had allergies in my life, but for some reason the last 2 months I'm sneezing nonstop. I got the allergy sore throat that I've never had before. He did a bunch of tests and he said, you're not allergic to a single thing. I've never seen this. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I knew I wasn't allergic to a single thing up until 2 months ago, but I don't know what's going on, doc. He said, I think what's happening is you have acid reflux, and that's affecting you in allergy and sinus type ways. And I was like, no, my stomach actually feels pretty good. I don't have any heartburn. He goes, you don't have to have heartburn to have acid reflux. Sometimes we don't even reel it, and our gut just feels off, but we're sneezing our heads off, and it's because our body is trying to push out toxins or things that it's not happy with. All of that stuff affects number 2, which is the very top there, our brain. Depression, anxiety, ADHD. I was diagnosed with all of those. But it was all a result of unclean food. The diagnosis is no longer stick. I'll just say it that way. Skin, one of the first places we feel it is in our skin. I used to think that if something didn't agree with me, I would feel it in my gut first. I now realize I usually feel it in my skin first, because not long after eating something, my skin starts to itch, or I've even had random just tweaks of pain like this. But if you guys pay attention, your body will talk to you. If your skin's on fire after you're eating, you're putting something unclean in your body. And these are all different ways you can recognize those signs. So joints down there. Once it was so bad, I ate at a clean restaurant, and within an hour I walked out of the restaurant. I got out of my car and I couldn't walk. My hand was literally like this in a claw, and I got out and I looked like a grandpa as I was walking to my front door, and I was like, what in the world is wrong with me? It had to be something I just ate at this clean restaurant. So it affects us in huge ways. I believe a lot of arthritis is simply they need cannabis, and they need to stop eating foods that are causing, inflammation. Adrenals and fatigue is one of the big ones. It ties in with the thyroid. All of this stuff, guys, affects the colon and what we produce and how we remove toxins. We have to remove toxins from our body. If we're not fueling our bodies with the right fibers to push that stuff out, then our body can't remove those toxins from our digestive system. So Hippocrates hit it again when he said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. When I look at the reality of where we're sitting today, we're putting in so much food that is what I call sad. Did you guys know America is really sad? It's because of the standard American diet. When we eat the standard American diet, it is going to cause the issues that we see that have become a national epidemic. So the first question, is cannabis a healing medicine? I think whether or not it's a medicine, it really just depends on the definition of medicine. You see, by OMMA standards, this is as a medicine, and that's great. We've been blessed to have medical marijuana approved here in this state. I think if we went back to 25 years ago and asked Hippocrates, is this medicine? He would say, yes, it can be, but if you eat it every day, it doesn't have to be, because you won't need any medicine. It's part of the food. I think if we went back to like the 1890s, I know for a fact, and I've got a poster on my wall that shows that cannabis sativa was part of the medicine in that time. Within the next 20 to 30 years, during the 1900s, about 1930, that all changed with the war on drugs and with the move towards synthetic medicine. In my opinion, today, as we look at it, medicine has become a synthetic produced, Pez dispenser that they're giving out ultimately, and it just doesn't quite match up. Part of the reason for that is, I believe more than anything, cannabis is a preventative healing herb. Cannabis has a lot of different names. A lot of them I don't like to use anymore. A lot of them, they come from earlier destinations that are all about that war on drugs. The reality is, a lot of people call it pot. I don't even know where that word came from. A lot of people call it weed. It's definitely not a weed. It's not a weed. It's an herb more than anything, but it's a therapeutic plant that has amazingly diverse therapeutics. There's no other plant out there that can treat so many different conditions, and I'll share with you guys why that is. It also has full spectrum oils. You're going to hear a lot of different things about a lot of different oils, a lot of the different, CBD. I believe that ultimately there's a synergistic, effect there, but it's only if we're getting full spectrum. When I cook in the kitchen, I always use full spectrum oils. I make full spectrum oils. I think it's vitally important for this whole mission. You guys have probably heard about the entourage effect, where if you bring in cannabinoids in several different ways, it works together, or works, more synergistically with the body. And I think that is so important. And if you really look at it and boil it down to it, again, I see it more as a healing therapeutic, as a healing remedy, as a healing herbal remedy, or a healing supplement, more so than as medicine. When we look at that, I think that's vitally important, especially as we talk to patients. It's important to consider. And the reality is, when we look at cannabis, it helps move us out of the toxic cycle. This is what the toxic cycle looked like, and I'll go through this pretty quick because I talked about it a little bit. But it starts with an unclean input. In other words, we put something unclean into our bodies. Then we have an inflammatory flare-up. Then low energy. And again, I shouldn't say we. This is the cycle for me. I go through each one of these steps when I put something unclean in my body. The next thing is, ironically, my body starts to have unclean cravings. So, if I'm eating McDonald's or some fast food, I want more of it. And it doesn't make any sense to me because I don't eat fast food very often. But sometimes I have these really strong cravings for fast food, and I realize it's what I've been eating the last few days. So when those cravings come on, we kind of get stuck in this vicious cycle. And you can see most cycles, they're round. I put this as a triangle on purpose because I think this cycle is jagged and there's all kinds of twists and turns. And if you've experienced this as a patient, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because then, we have low energy kicks in, the aches and pains kick in, and the mental fatigue kicks in, and all we want to do is eat comfort food and eat something that's unclean, and it makes that cycle just get worse and worse. I said I wouldn't talk about bowel movements anymore or give you guys the poop talk, but what this is characterized by is gut issues and sporadic stools. So we'll talk about stools from now on. Is that all right? Talk about stools, not poop. But it really is. You can look at your schedule there and how regular you are and tell whether your body is toxic or not, and cannabis plays a role in helping with that. But I think one important question we have to ask, and if the FDA gets their way, we won't be able to talk about this as a food. That's the one reason I think it's very important for how we present this and what we do with it. But is cannabis a superfood? Is it a food at all? Should it be used as food? Should we be cooking with cannabis is one of the questions I get. The truth is, cannabis has an incredibly high nutritional value. When you look at hemp even, it's very high in omega-3s. It's higher in omega-3s than a lot of things that we consider superfoods. So if you look at the way that those healthy fats interact in our body, it plays an amazing beneficial role in just producing those diverse therapeutic effects we talked about. I think it's crucially important to understand that within the plant cannabis sativa, we have hemp protein, we have hemp seeds that have an amazing amount of healthy fats. And then we also have oils that can be derived straight from the plant. I like to infuse my oils so I can keep all of the plant right there in the oils. But really, those full spectrum oils are living oils. That oil should still be a living organism that interacts with our body. Full spectrum benefits. It's so important to get the whole plant in our bodies. One of the reasons that when I address why does the plant work for me sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, it's because I wasn't getting the full spectrum benefits, and I think that is crucial for anyone's healthy health protocol. Terpene rich. A lot of you have probably heard about terpenes but may not know much about them, and to that I would say go spend some time really understanding it, because we now believe that most of the therapeutic value, or I should probably say a large part of the therapeutic value, comes from the terpenes. So the more we can get more terpenes into our body, the more we can get more consistent results with the plant. Next is really, when I again boil it down, when I look at cannabis, it's a healing herbal remedy. If we treat it as food, though, our body should keep itself running to the point where we never need it as a remedy. Because if our body's running right, we don't get sick. Okay, so the difference is, if we're healthy and we're using cannabis as a food daily, we don't get to the point where our body gets sick, where we need to come in and actually find healing. So I think that's an important mission for us to all keep in mind. And I've been able to achieve that and get my body into remission to where I now actually feel healthy, and it's because of the way that I've cooked with cannabis. I think an important thing to address, as we talked about the toxic cycle, is the detoxification cycle, what that looks like, tips for you guys on how to know if you're in it. First of all, it starts with a clean input. You have to put something clean in your body. It starts with food, clean food, chemical-free food, more plants, more nutrition. I don't like to call it diets anymore because most people think of diets as losing weight. We should be talking about nutritional plans. We should be talking about eating schedules, because we put our cars on a regular maintenance schedule, yet when we eat inconsistently and all over the day. And do you think our bodies will run very good if they're not on a regular schedule? We know our cars need it, but we're completely irregular on everything we essentially push down on our bodies. So our food has to be cleaner, our water has to be cleaner, we have to fuel our body with clean water, we have to fuel our body with healing herbs and plants and things that produce more in our body. What happens as we do it, though, or what happens for me, see, I have struggle with this, keeping to the FDA statement, it should be all I statements. So this is the cycle that I go through as I'm detoxing. Next thing that I notice is I start to have lighter movement. The joints don't feel as stiff, my back doesn't feel as stiff. If I start putting clean food in, usually I have a little more energy instantly, and I start to feel better, and my body moves better. It's amazing. As my body moves better, I get more energy, and I start doing increased activity. As I start getting, it's easier for me to walk the dog. It's no longer a major chore to take a 15-minute walk with my dog. I take him on a 30-minute walk, and we both have a lot more fun. Then I start getting clean cravings. This is the craziest thing. I did a liquid detox for 10 days where I had nothing but liquid for 10 days. And I went in craving all the junk I saw on TV, and the first 3 days were torture, and I hated every minute of it. And every time I turned on, there was another commercial with terrible fast food. And I craved it nonstop, but I did not get off of the liquid detox. By day 10, it was revolutionary because I started craving salads and spinach and stuff that I never, ever craved. I didn't even believe it was possible to crave healthy stuff. But at the end of that 10-day detox, I was craving healthy stuff, and I went on to be a vegetarian for a period of time, and it was so easy, and I couldn't believe it because I love meat, guys. That's a whole other story. But I was shocked that I had clean cravings, and I promise you it is possible when you start putting more clean stuff in. Again, increased energy was throughout the process. It kept getting stronger and stronger. But as all of that came, I got mental clarity, and I had an improved mood. All of those misdiagnoses, it started to change as I put cleaner and cleaner food in. This is the cycle, though. You can imagine as you get to number 6 there, that if you've experienced all of that in a 3 to 10 day process, you're going to want to put more clean inputs. You're going to have more clean things put in your body. So it really is cyclical, and it just kind of builds on itself. The last important thing I would say is it's characterized by gut health and consistent full stools. If you will listen to your body, if you'll learn to listen to your body, It is actually possible in the mornings after a morning stool to feel happy. Honestly, I would liken it to a cannabis plant, like the nice high I get off of a cannabis. If my body is regular and I have probiotics, regularly in the morning I get done in the restroom and I feel this tingly, happy sensation. Believe it or not, I've noticed in my dog too. When he's happy, he runs and jumps after his morning movement. But believe it or not, guys, I promise you, if you go through this process and you get on if you need it, the right probiotics, you can feel happy in the mornings after this. It is a part of the gut health, and everything is tied to our guts. Everything from our brain and our entire bodies is tied to our gut health. So one important thing when we look at cooking with cannabinoids, I'm going to kind of push the limit even more as I talk about whether or not this is medicine. I want to continue that conversation, or whether it's a superfood. The truth is, though, I completely agree with what Hippocrates said here 2,500 years ago. Natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. I think anybody in the cannabis industry needs to be mindful of this, because the truth is, I believe what actually happens with the cannabis plant is it activates our body. It activates our body and gets it into healing mode. Because of what Dr. Regina shared with you about how it activates the ECS receptors in your body, it's really just getting your body to run the way that it should, because our bodies are meant to push disease out. Our bodies are designed, or created is a better word, with the purpose of pushing toxins out. Inflammation and arthritis is your body trying to do that. So you see, your body was designed to do all this naturally, and when it gets bogged down by these toxins or the illness or the chemicals, it can no longer function and be able to do that. So cannabis helps our body get going into healing mode, or what some people call homeostasis. But I think it's important to recognize that our body has its own healing system, and if we keep it working right, it'll do its job. Chef Tony's healing protocol, as I went through this process, again, constant trial and error, trying to determine why sometimes the plant worked for me, sometimes it didn't. This is what I realized, and this is what I've gone through to come up with this protocol. First of all, I think it's vitally important to have hemp protein for detox. Hemp works as a detoxification within our bodies. We hear a lot about CBD, but to me, that's not true hemp. If we go to hemp protein, hemp seeds, that's the type of hemp I'm talking about right now. What happened with me is I found that I started getting better and better and better, and then as I added hemp protein shakes, it took my healing to another level. Today, when I start to feel sick, I use intermittent fasting, which I do that all the time now, which is only eating basically for a certain period of time and then staying on liquids throughout the other time. I found intermittent, and guys, just so you know, I hated doing this because I'm a breakfast person. I love eating a big breakfast first thing in the morning, but a lot of times what we put into our bodies, it doesn't work in that schedule thing, and especially, if we're doing it sometimes we're not. But the important thing I want to say is intermittent fasting and hemp protein shakes will take anything you're struggling with to a new level. Always start with the gut and always treat inflammation. Again, gut issues are basically just inflammation, but we should all be treating inflammation. I would encourage all of you to go green and get clean if you want to do the healing protocol. What that means, again, you don't have to become vegetarians, but you should eat meat that's fed a nice, clean vegetarian diet. One of the most exciting things that I see in this culinary trend that I mentioned earlier is hemp-fed proteins. There's an awesome video on my Facebook page about hemp-fed protein farm in Colorado where they only feed the pigs hemp, and then as they're going to the slaughter, they give them an injection of CBD. So what happens is that pig walks in all peaceful, he's so happy, instead of having an adrenaline shock toughening up the meat the way that they normally take them to slaughter. So it's amazing to me that the nutritional value of this plant doesn't just process into our human bodies, but we can look at it, into pork and other things like that. So I believe that's a huge culinary trend that we'll see in the future. But overall, we should ingest more clean plants. I do things like drink tea all the time now, where I used to drink a lot of coffee that messed up my body. We can incorporate more plants in a very simple way if we'll look for ways to do it. But I believe that there's also a green herbal entourage effect. Instead of an entourage effect that applies to cannabis, there's a synergistic effect from all plants coming together. I know that my body gets rid of inflammation so much faster when I take CBD, because we all know that helps, right? And THC oils, we know that helps. But I think the next step in that process is getting some hemp protein in there. But when I take turmeric or other anti-inflammatory herbs and plants, it speeds up and works better together. And I used to be not a fan of turmeric, and now I drink the tea 2 or 3 times a day, and I'll drink it even more if I feel sick. But what I've noticed is when we get in the kitchen, there is definitely that same entourage effect that creates synergy between other plants. So my conclusion is that cannabis is a superfood. I believe it should be treated as a superfood. I think we need to get back to talking about herbal remedies and get away from words like pot and weed. When we look at our ECS system, the endocannabinoid system, that Dr. Regina was just talking to you about, most of you guys know about that. You know that it works within our receptors. But I believe that as we look at that, we need to realize we must feed our ECS system. I don't think we're going to smoke our system. We're going to feed our system. Again, why I look at it as a superfood. I love the way that Doc explained it. She said you can't get a true therapeutic dosage of cannabis by smoking it. Like she said earlier today, there's no scientific evidence that smoking cannabis will cause any ill effects, but you can't get enough cannabinoids, you can't get enough cannabis into your body, you can't get all those full spectrum benefits fed into your system if you're just smoking it. At best, you're going to get relief, but you're not truly addressing the root cause of those issues. So I think that's important to remember, because while we all may love a smokable product, the truth is we got to get more of our plant in our bodies. Cannabis as a superfood is rich in cannabinoids. That's why we get such a diverse effect from this plant. It is plant synergistic. It does work great with other things. So much so that I'll tell you a funny story. You see here, I had only one meal forever. I used to play this game when I was a kid. I've been a foodie since I was little. But I played this game where I'd ask people, hey, if you had one meal and it was all you could eat for the rest of your life and you could only choose 1 or 2 things, what would you choose for the meal that you could eat for your whole life? And for me, it was steak. And if I got to choose 2, it was steak and potatoes. You know, they go well together. And I always explain that potatoes were the best vegetable because you could scallop them, you could fry them, you could have French fries. You know, there's all these different ways. Potato salad. There's all these ways you can cook with potatoes. So it's the greatest vegetable ever. The funny thing is, today, if you asked me that question and we played that game, I would say cannabis. And I would say the one food I want is cannabis, because I can have hemp protein shakes all day long. And if I don't have time to eat, I'll fuel my body on protein shakes till 8, 9 o'clock and be just fine. I would have hemp seeds. I would have cannabis oil, because at least if I got hungry, I'd be happy, you know. But I would fuel my body all day long. And if I got to choose 2 things, it would be cannabis and lamb, because I love meat. I told you guys I love meat. Oh, no, wait, I mean cannabis and coconut. I infuse all of my oils into coconut oil. For me, it's the best carrier, not just because of the way it reacts, but because of the way that my body carries it. So honestly, if I had to choose 2 foods right now, it truly would be cannabis and coconut. I believe I could fuel my body for as long as I needed on those ingredients. And again, when I look at it, if we treat it properly, cannabis is a food. It really is how we treat it, what we do with it. So since I probably may not have covered something that you guys wanted, I'll tell you about other ways we can talk more. A lot of people think I'm going to share a recipe or I'm going to tell you the best way to make brownies. The truth is, as you guys might have gathered, I'm not really into the typical edible. I think that we have to clean up everything as possible. And there is clean edibles out there. One brand that I love that's here is OK Ice Cream. They use very clean ingredients. So instead of using artificial sugars, they use fructose that's derived from grapes. So those are the type of groups that I'm getting really involved with. Cannabis and their honey, you'll see them out there tomorrow at the brunch. But what I love about those, edibles as we call them, is they're clean, and when I eat them, I feel a better effect from them, and it's because I believe my body's not way down trying to process that sugar. So all that to say, there's so much more I could talk about. Some people want me to talk about the therapeutic value of cooking with cannabis. Some people just want me to teach them how to get high better with cooking with cannabis. All of that's possible. If you want to contact me and talk to me more, I've got my email here. I've got my mobile. You can call me directly. I'd be happy to send you a copy of this.